Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to untangle the incredibly confusing terminology used for those islands sitting just off the northwestern coast of continental Europe. If you've ever found yourself pausing mid-sentence, wondering if you're actually using the right word for the right country, or island, or kingdom, well, trust me, you are definitely not alone.
Seriously, what is the actual difference between Great Britain, the UK, and England? It's a question that stumps almost everyone, from your casual geography fans to seasoned travelers. People use these terms interchangeably literally all the time, but they actually mean very, very different things. So we're going to peel back the layers of history to reveal how ancient tribes, conquering empires, and even some pretty wild ancient myths shaped our modern maps. We'll decode exactly what these names mean, and more importantly, where they came from.
Okay, let's just dive right into this and establish our foundational map. The United Kingdom, or the UK, is a purely political term. It's the sovereign state made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Great Britain, on the other hand, is strictly a geographic term. It refers to the largest single island, containing only England, Scotland, and Wales. Now, the term Britain is often used casually for the UK, but historically it ties directly to that main island. Then we have the island of Ireland, which is geographically part of the British Isles, but politically split between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Add it all up, and you've got a massive geographical headache, covering an entire archipelago of over 6,000 islands.
So, the crucial piece to this puzzle is understanding how these names were actually created in the first place. Throughout this explainer, we're going to look at two absolutely vital concepts: endonyms and exonyms. An endonym, that's the name that native local people call their own home. An exonym is a name given to a place by outsiders, conquering empires, distant map makers, arriving tribes. The whole naming headache of these islands is almost entirely driven by the historical tension between local Celtic endonyms and the exonyms applied by folks like the Greeks, Romans, and Anglo-Saxons.
And this right here is like our own personal etymological time machine. Just look at the ancient linguistic roots. England comes from the German Angles, Scotland derives from the Latin Scoti, and Wales stems from the Old English Waelth. We're going to break each of these down, starting with the absolute oldest known name for the primary island itself.
Before it was Britain, the oldest known recorded name for the island of Great Britain was Albion. But where on earth did that come from? Well, there are a few compelling linguistic theories and some pretty fascinating myths. The first theory traces it back to the Proto-Indo-European root albo, meaning white. I mean, imagine you're a Roman or Greek sailor crossing the channel from mainland Europe. The very first thing greeting you would be those towering, brilliant white cliffs of Dover. Makes sense, right? A second theory suggests it comes from the Celtic root albio, which simply meant the world, specifically the visible world of the Celts who lived there. But, there's also a legendary origin. Medieval myths claim the island was named after Albion, the eldest of Emperor Diocletian's exiled daughters, who supposedly washed ashore here and founded a race of giants. No way to prove that, obviously, but whether it was white cliffs, the visible world, or exiled princesses, Albion was for sure the first true name.
Now, what is truly fascinating about this is how that ancient classical label of Albion actually survives today. While the English language largely dropped Albion in favor of Britain, the root word never actually died. If you look at the modern Celtic languages, the native indigenous words for Scotland are directly linked to it. In Scottish Gaelic, it's Alba. In Irish, it's Albane. And in Welsh, it's Alban. That ancient geographical footprint is literally still spoken every single day.
And we have proof of how far back this goes. Take a look at this quote from a Greek text around 320 BC. It proves the immense significance of early Greek and Roman accounts. Ancient explorers like Pythias of Massalia sailed to these distant, mysterious northern lands and documented them. Their writings permanently shaped our historical place names. The Greeks called the islands Albion and Ierne, which was their early take on Ireland. Because these classical empires were the ones writing the maps, well, their exonyms stuck.
So, how exactly did we get from Albion to Britain? Well, the Greeks and Romans eventually transitioned to using variations of the word Britannia. Now, this actually originated from a common Brittonic Celtic term, Brittani. It's believed that Brittani meant the painted ones, or the tattooed folk, referring to the local custom of body decoration. So the classical mapmakers essentially took a native word describing the appearance of the people, Latinized it, and turned it into the geographic exonym Britannia that we still use today.
And hey, if you've ever wondered what makes Great Britain so great, actually, scratch that. It isn't a boast of excellence or power at all. It originated as a purely practical distinction by the classical geographer Ptolemy. He referred to the larger island as Megali Britannia, or Great Britain, just to distinguish it from Micro Britannia, or Little Britain, which at the time meant Ireland.
Later on in history, the term Great Britain was used to differentiate the large island from the French peninsula of Brittany, which had been settled by British migrants. So great purely means larger. It's just a size comparison.
All right, let's fast forward a bit and see how this builds the foundation for England. As the Roman Empire withdrew, Germanic tribes crossed the North Sea in the 5th century and deeply branded the territory. The primary group here was the Angles, originating from the Angelhen Peninsula in modern-day Germany. Classical writers like Tacitus had actually noted the Angles centuries prior, and by the late 9th century, writers like Bede were referring to the territory as Angleland, literally the land of the Angles.
But history is all about perspective. While the arriving tribes proudly named their new home England after the Angles, their Celtic neighbors to the north and west looked at a completely different arriving group. The Saxons had also crossed the sea. To this day, the Irish Gaelic word for England is Sasana, and the Scottish Gaelic word is Sasan, both of which literally translate to the land of the Saxons. So, depending on which border you stood on, you named the country after the specific tribe you were interacting with.
Now, as the Anglo-Saxons claimed England, they pushed the native indigenous Britons westward. And the power of exonyms here can be incredibly harsh. The Anglo-Saxons labeled these Western peoples Welsh, which stems from the Old English root woolish. This word meant Romanized foreigner or even slave. I mean, just think about the irony of that for a second. The arriving Anglo-Saxons were literally calling the native original inhabitants of the island foreigners in their own land.
But the people of Wales, they absolutely did not accept this outsider label for themselves. In beautiful defiance of that Anglo-Saxon exonym, the Welsh have always called their home Cymru. This is a true endonym. It's firmly rooted in a Celtic word that means compatriot or fellow countryman. It is a name born out of total unity and brotherhood in the face of being pushed to the edges of the island by invaders.
Let's shift our focus north for a minute. Imagine, just for a second, that I am a Roman scholar reflecting on these distant lands. We look out from our civilized, conquered southern province of Britannia toward the untamed, heavily forested northern frontier. We simply cannot conquer it, so we use the massive physical bottlenecks of the Forth and Clyde River estuaries to draw a firm line on the map, separating our Britannia from the wild north, which we call Caledonia.
But stepping back into the present day, we know the Romans didn't pull the name Caledonia out of thin air. Modern linguists suggest this Latinization likely derived from indigenous tribal words. By combining the Celtic roots cal, meaning hard, and ped, meaning foot, the name Caledonies likely described the locals' endurance. Essentially, it meant people with hard feet. That is an incredibly fitting tribute to the sheer toughness required to stand fast and survive in that rugged, mountainous terrain.
So how did Caledonia eventually become Scotland? It's a really fascinating mix of tribal realities and legendary myths. The term Scotty was actually a Latin word first used to describe Gaelic raiders sailing over from Ireland. Meanwhile, the Romans called the native northern tribes Picts, meaning painted people. Eventually, the name of these Irish raiders, the Scots, completely overtook the territory. But there's also a fantastic medieval myth that the name actually comes from an Egyptian or Scythian princess named Skoda, who supposedly voyaged to the islands and founded the early tribes. It just goes to show how history and mythology so frequently blend together on the map.
Rounding out the British Isles, Ireland's name carries this exact same historical tension. On one side, you have the Roman map makers who labeled the island Hibernia, but on the other side, you have the deeply rooted native Celtic endonym, Ire. This name doesn't come from a conquering tribe or some distant emperor. It derives directly from Eru, a native Celtic goddess of the island. It's a profound reminder of the indigenous culture that predates all those classical maps.
Which brings us to a final thought to chew on. The names we casually type into our GPS or read on a globe, Great Britain, England, Scotland, Wales, they are not just static labels. They are literal battlegrounds of language. They are the results of Roman mistranslations, Anglo-Saxon conquests, and the stubborn survival of native Celtic tongues. So the next time you look at a map of the world, ask yourself, who really did the naming? Because as this explainer has shown, history isn't just written by the victors. It is written by the map makers. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.